Welcome to Out FM, Tab.
Hi, how you doing?
Tab, congratulations on the enormous success of your biography, Tab Hunter Confidential, The Making of a Movie Star.
Thank you very much. I'm really pleased the way things are going on it. I can't tell you how much.
Tab, you made your movie debut in 1948 in a small role in The Lawless.
That's right, directed by Joe Losey, who left the country and then went to France to work.
Now, it would be 2 years before you turn up on the screen, is that correct?
2 years of collecting unemployment and getting all kinds of jobs and not being able to get another job. And I did one or two little television shows, but that was about it.
And then the next big break was Island of Desire, is that correct?
That's right. Paul Guilfoyle, a wonderful character actor from New York, was the one who told me about the role, took me to meet the writer and director. And when I met the writer, she took one look at me and said, "That's the boy I want." And next thing I know, I was testing with Linda Darnell for the film, and it just zoom went on from there.
And of course, it skyrocketed you to fame.
Well, with a new name and starring in a motion picture, where does one serve one's apprenticeship? It's pretty difficult when you're a young kid, just kind of not knowing which end is up.
Alan, Tab, the invitation to the press release read, "Bring your cameras for the unveiling of the fresh beefcake." What did you think about that?
Well, you do whatever the studio tells you to do or whatever PR people tell you because that's your job. If they say you go to the opening of a door, you go to the opening of the door. I mean, I was a wide-eyed kid, and what young kid at that age wouldn't be totally, struck by what's happening and all of that? But then you have a conflict within yourself throughout all that time. At least I certainly did, because here I was living two lives. It was very, very difficult and very frightening because I was a quiet, private person.
Then came Battle Cry, which really put you on the map, and on the covers of hundreds and hundreds of magazines, including 4 magazines that were just titled Tab Hunter, and they were just magazines exclusively devoted to you and your life and your career. You actually beat out, was it Jimmy Dean for that role?
For Battle Cry, yeah, they did 8 tests. I did 8 tests for that role. Then they came to New York and tested Paul Newman and Jimmy Dean for the part. And then they came back and tested me once more, and it was the last test, which I thought I totally fouled up. That was the one they wanted, and they hired me and put me under an option to put me under contract.
Tab, shortly after, and I may have the time frame here a little off kilter, but maybe you'll help me out and straighten it out. Shortly after your first film, I believe, you attended a gay party that ended up being raided by the Los Angeles Police Department.
Oh, no, that was before I ever did films. I was just a kid out of the service. I was about 16 and a half years old. And my friend Terry Marsteller said, "I'm going to a party this evening. You want to go?" I said, "Fine." Of course, I walked in, and I saw some guys dancing with each other and a couple of women dancing with each other. And I thought, oh, gosh, not another one of those kind of places. So I walked over to the, because, I mean, not that I have anything against it. I mean, but I just, I'm not a party kind of a person. I'm a kid. All I was doing was hungry. I went to the refrigerator, fixed myself something to eat, and the cops walked in.
But it wasn't...
But the press called it a gay pajama party and God knows what all. I wrote all about that in the book. I figure, people, the press has a tendency to go a little overboard, don't you think?
Of course they do. But one of the it wasn't your first gay party, as you said in the book.
Well, I've been to a gathering of a few people here and there, but I don't find that interesting. I don't find that exciting. I'm not comfortable in those kind of situations. Yeah. They're just difficult.
Straight or gay, I don't think you really.
I really have always. I would sit in a corner. I'm just not that kind of a person. I'm not an extrovert. I'm not an out there person.
Tab, during your stay under contract at Warner Brothers, you, like so many other stars, endured studio-fabricated romances that were tailored to sell tickets and movie magazines.
Absolutely. I mean, Natalie Wood had just come. She was just fresh off of having done Rebel with Jimmy. I was just hot as a what have you from doing Battle Cry. So they threw us together for a Louis L'Amour in a Louis L'Amour film called The Burning Hills. The best thing in The Burning Hills was my horse. Gosh. But Warner's tried to make, the William Powell Myrna Loy out of us. And we joked. I mean, Natalie was a lot younger than me. She was a kid, a young girl, young woman finding her legs. She was a delight. And I loved going out with Nat and Debbie and Laurie Nelson and Venetia Stevenson. I mean, a lot of the dates, the studio didn't have to tell me who to take out. I'd take out if they had someone under contract and they wanted to build them up. But basically, I go out with people that I want to go out with.
Now, while you dated some of the most beautiful women in Hollywood, on the side you were really sexually involved with men.
Well, I had some relationships, yes, of course.
You had a relationship with a fabulous ice skater who was a champion by the name of Ronnie Robertson.
That's right.
Was that your first big relationship? I mean, I think you were really, really fond and admired him, didn't you?
Well, I think Ronnie was a tremendous talent. In fact, when I was over at the World Championships with Mr. Lucy, who was Dick Button's trainer also, and a great, great coach, I thought Ronnie should have won the Worlds that year in Vienna. I mean, he was a brilliant skater, no question about that.
And in addition to Ronnie Robertson, there was Rudolf Nureyev.
I knew Rudy in the south of France. He had a home up in La Tour, and we used to all go to the beach together. We had a fun little group that we'd all sit out in the south of France at the Monte Carlo Beach Hotel and swim and have lunch. And it was just when I wasn't working down in Italy.
And there was Helmut Berger.
I knew Helmut in the West Coast. No, not the West Coast. I knew Helmut in Rome. He was a very good friend of Luchino Visconti's.
And then there was a 3-year relationship with Tony Perkins.
If you're talking about threads in the tapestry of my life, Tony was a very interesting, very complex person, a very fine actor with a wonderful sense of humor. He was a very tormented kind of young man. He was very career-minded, so was I at that time. And I really thought how fortunate he was to have, come from New York and had the wonderful, the East Coast training. People want to, dwell on relationships. Those are all part of the fabric of growing up and developing as a human being. I loved being in the business, and to me, the important thing was the people I was working with and learning my craft from. Those were things that happened in my life. But let's talk about Gary Cooper, Fred Astaire, Van Heflin, those really incredible, Lana Turner, Natalie, Sophia Loren, and how can you overlook Geraldine Page and people like that? I mean, those are people that you really learn from and developed from as an actor. The others you learn from, and those were just part of my journey as a young man.
But interestingly enough, Tab, in your biography, it seems to me that Tony was really more in the closet than you were. I mean, even though, the press releases for this book say, Tab is coming out, it appears to me that you really weren't in the closet. I mean, you were Tony wanted to go out when you would go out together, and he would wear sunglasses and a hat pulled down over his head, often meet you at your destination as opposed to going with you, and you didn't do that.
But, I mean, that's all just, we were both kids at that time.
Yeah.
I mean, that was a part of our life, an important part of my life. I'm sure an important part of his life. That's all part of the tapestry of a very interesting life that I've had. I mean, the things about, whether it be the breakdown of my mother, or the death of my brother, or the other lows that I've made, or lows that I've had, or the highs that I've had. I mean, you put that all together, those are part of the overall fabric. That's what's important. I just don't want to pinpoint it on having known this person or having known that person. I mean, life is so much more than that. You are what you think. I think the important thing in life is your development mentally, physically, and number one, spiritually. Those are the things that one has to hinge their life on, growing physically and mentally, and most important, spiritually.
But on the other hand, Tab, one of the things, let's talk a little bit about Confidential magazine, because, simply, for those people who don't know, Confidential was the forerunner, I guess, of the National Enquirer.
It was a rag that I made 3 covers and 4 stories. I think I made the first Confidential cover and shared it with Marilyn Monroe. I don't know what her story was.
Now, there's an interesting, you tell this incredible story about Henry Wilson, who was your first agent, and you let Henry go and hooked up with Dick Clayton, who obviously was really terrific and still is
an incredible human being. Dick Clayton is one of the great people of all time. A lot of people say, agents are bloodsuckers, but I've got to tell you right now, Dick Clayton is still, to this day, my closest friend. He's 90 years old, God bless him, and he's an incredible human being. And if it weren't for Dick Clayton, there would have been no Tab Hunter, period.
One of the things that Henry Wilson did, they were about to out Rock Hudson in Confidential magazine. and you were no longer working with Henry. And
I know he was no longer my agent. When Dick became an agent, I left Henry and went with Dick Clayton, who was my oldest, one of the few people I could trust and rely on that shark in those shark-infested waters.
So, in a really lousy turnabout, Henry Wilson calls Confidential magazine and says, look, if you don't out Rock Hudson, I'll give you two great stories. One about Tap Hunter and another about Rory Calhoun being in prison in exchange for no report on Rock. That must have hurt you in a way.
Well, of course it hurt me, but, there's Hollywood loyalty for you.
Yeah.